Good morning, and welcome to the first lesson of the Truth of America's Founding. This is,
Kevin.
and I'm Pat.
I'm Linda.
Awesome. Welcome to the torch. What are we talking about, Miss Pat?
Well, we're talking about a very brief example of what the Constitution holds.
Awesome.
I'm going to ask both of you a question.
Sure.
First, let me make a statement here. It's a myth that Christopher Columbus came to America in search of riches, and somewhere in my mind it was spices also. I don't remember.
Some spices.
Some spices. But that's not true. It is a myth. So, what did he come here for?
Why did Christopher Columbus come to this new world? I mentioned this before, but I think I'll say it again. It's worth saying again. I think he came to look for new vacation destinations along the beaches. That's what I think.
What do you think of that, Linda?
Probably not. But
probably not. Everybody's looking for a good
vacation. I thought it was for riches.
You thought it was for riches?
Yeah.
Well, let me read you a quote from his journal from 1492.
1492.
Mm-hmm. It was the Lord who put it into my mind, I could feel his hand upon me, to sail to the Indies. There is no question that the inspiration was from the Holy Spirit, because he comforted me with rays of marvelous illumination from the Holy Scriptures. And he wrote further, I knew that the natives were people who could better be freed and converted to our holy faith by love than by force. They remain so much our friends that I believe they would easily be made Christians.
Interesting. So, was not beaches then?
No, it wasn't beaches. You're going to have to find a different vacation spot.
I'm going to have to find a different vacation spot. That is just really, back in a lot of the professors and a lot of universities, they might not say he came here to find beaches and stuff, but they have all kinds of different reasons why Christopher Columbus came to this country.
All of the information that we're presenting to these people, to everybody, is the fact that this comes from federal documents.
Mm-hmm.
This comes from original resources, like the Federalist Papers and that sort of thing. People can go right online and find this information by going to the Federalist Papers.
You said original documents. You mean like source, not source content, but original source, or what's the word for it? There's a original
source documents.
Source documents.
Like for example, what I just read came from his 1492 journal.
It came from his journal.
It came from his journal. That's what he wrote.
Well, I thought the professors knew what he wrote, and they're telling all these kids across America, when they're in these programs in these universities and in high school, that Christopher Columbus did this. But Christopher Columbus might know what he did more than they did?
I would think so.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's crazy to think that. You have to say that.
I would think that we should believe the source documents, the actual journal that he wrote in, as opposed to somebody's imagination.
So, this material that we're going to go through, I think we've shared it before, but most of the materials that are put out by the Institute on the Constitution, these are coming from source documents, not somebody's theory on what.
That's right.
So as we're presenting, I know this is the episode 1 or lesson 1, and they should know that the rest of these lessons and going forward is really based on the source document. This is the authority that we can have by sharing this is because it's not what we're saying, it's what the people are saying that were there.
They were there. We weren't. That professor wasn't. It was a little bit before our time.
Just a tiny bit?
Just a tiny bit.
Not much.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. So, anyway, I just thought the people at home might need to know that because, I mean, if they're going to share, if they're going to come on here and join us and go through these, they should know that this is coming from the people who were there and why they came, not what somebody else said they came for.
Exactly, so, and a lot of research has gone into this.
Awesome.
And so it's history. You can't change history.
They're sure trying.
Yes and no, but you can't change history. So.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to this exciting thing. I mean, we're already started off with Christopher Columbus. What else do we have? What else do we got going on here?
Let's take Christopher another step. Why did he sail west to get to the East Indies?
Sailing west to get to the
The
east.
shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line.
That's what they say.
That's what they say.
So why would somebody sail west to get to the east?
Because they didn't have a GPS.
They didn't have a GPS,
They
probably. No Google Maps. Have you ever tried to use a map recently and drive with the map
Wow.
like we used to? I remember going through Houston and wanting to plot out and have the like. How in the world did people drive and look at a
Over
map?
most of the windshield. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you open those.
Anyway, I know we're getting kind of off on
Okay.
that, but anyway, so why did he sail west to get to the east?
Well, it seems that the Muslims controlled the trade routes, and they had been controlled by the Muslims since 600 A.D.
Wow, 600 A.D., meaning after death A.D.,
Yes.
after Jesus,
Yes.
600 years after Jesus' death A.D., they were controlling the trade routes.
Exactly.
So did that cause a problem with people trying to travel that
Well, yeah.
way?
As a matter of fact, I got another question for you.
Please.
America's first war on terrorism was fought during whose presidency?
I think I mentioned this before once. Lincoln?
Oh, too far.
Too far.
Roosevelt.
Too far the other way.
Too far the other way. Too far the other way. So what
Who
Try.
is it?
Try Thomas Jefferson.
Thomas Jefferson.
It seems that the Marines, otherwise known as the Leathernecks, fought excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Fought the Barbary powers of war and the Barbary Coast pirates. There's a song from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. That was it.
Oh, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores. That was having to do with where they were warring against the Muslims.
Yes, exactly.
Hmm.
The Barbary pirates. There's a book called "The Threat of Islam to Liberty and Christianity." It's a good read. It even goes through here and compares Christianity to Islam, Muslim, and it's several pages just doing a comparison.
Where can they get that book from?
They can get that book if you go to theamericanview.com. It's theamericanview.com.
The American View.
Right at the top of the first page, there's a menu that says, and then it says store. Click on that, and it takes you into the store, and you can go through, and there's a lot of information in there, a lot of different things that you can buy.
Eventually, there'll be a link or something that they can go. Just basically, they can go through. Maybe an email you provide or something. I think that we're working on a website where you can put your code, and they could just go to the website, click on the link. It'll take it, and because Miss Pat's, as a host of the class, and having do you have a partnership with them or like a membership with them? Is that
It's
correct?
a membership.
So with the American View, it was worth getting because of the amount of content that we're planning on teaching and what we've already teach. And we do a 12-week one of these as well.
We've already done a 12-week one, and they just updated a lot of information on that.
Mm-hmm.
And the material is sitting in my box right now that I haven't picked up.
Oh my! Is that the sheriff one or just the new 12-week?
That's just the new 12-week one. That the sheriff one is in the works.
So eventually, Miss Pat might be getting her own website, but until then, she might be able to provide a link on our website. It's not there yet, where it'll take you from our website directly to with her code and everything like that, so that she would get credit for that as well. And so, anyway, sorry that but this book right here, you can get from that. It's a good read. It looks very.
It's an easy read.
Little read. I mean, it's not like you know.
It's a simple, easy read, and let's see, it's all of 54 pages.
Have you read this one yet?
Yes.
I have not, but it's on my list.
Do you? I think I have a copy of that from the original, but I haven't even gotten to it yet. Did you get a copy of that when you came to the 12-week? Did you come to the 12-week?
I did, but I don't think I
Okay.
a copy of it.
Well, anyway, I'll read it and then we'll have to pass it on
Okay,
to you.
thanks.
So anyway, so where are we going with this? The first president that had this war on terror. Then what happened? Then where do we go from there?
Okay. They resolved that, and just as a side note, I found it interesting that back in the late 15th century, Spain, excuse me, evicted the Jewish people from their borders, and they had until August the 2nd to get out or be killed.
Oh my goodness!
So the harbor was filled with ships.
The harbor was filled with ships
To-
for the
to-
Jewish people to get them out of the nation.
Right, and amongst all those ships, there were 3 other ships. And I found it interesting that the year was 1492.
1492. There's a poem.
Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
So 1492, they were sending the Jewish people out, putting them on ships away, and getting them out of there. 3 other ships were in the harbor. I've got a feeling you're going to tell me what those ship names are.
The Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria.
Seems like I've heard those names before.
Go back to your history class.
Go back to your history class, or we should be going back to your history class now.
Probably.
Yeah.
So those were the Columbus's ships that were.
They were there getting ready to sail. Sailing west to go east.
Because they were trying to avoid the Muslims at the time.
Right.
Wow. Wow.
But I thought it was an interesting point that way back then, the people were evicting Jewish and getting them out of their borders.
Interesting.
And they had to get out or die, which was rather harsh. Let's move on to
Sure.
the Pilgrims.
Yes.
Remember the Pilgrims?
I love the Pilgrims.
You love the Pilgrims.
I do love the Pilgrims.
It's not a ball club.
It's not. Isn't there that there's a cookie dough called the Pilgrims or so? Or is there a Pilgrim? Pioneer? No. What's the Pillsbury? Sorry, wrong P.
Okay.
It was Pillsbury, not Pilgrims.
Moving on.
Yes, turkey. Big
A lot of
hats.
people think that the Pilgrims came to America for religious freedom, which is not true. I'm going to read you a quote from the Mayflower Compact, which was written by the Pilgrims. In the name of God, amen, having undertaken, for the glory of God and the advancement of Christian faith, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern part of Virginia. So in reality, they came here not for religious freedom, they already had that.
Oh.
And but the larger purpose was establishing an entire nation for God's glory and to advance Christian faith and uniting God and government. This is American exceptionalism.
Exceptionalism. So they already had the religious freedom, but they were wanting to come here basically to establish that here.
Yes.
Interesting.
There's more story behind it, but for this class we don't cover that part.
Right.
But
the 12-week one there probably covers that. If they want to know more about it, the 12-week more in depth. If they enjoy this, they might.
Yeah, the 12-week one goes in depth into the Constitution. The Declaration of Independence even covers a lot of the preamble and everything, which we'll cover some of that stuff in here. There is a video that I'd like for you people to see. It's about the Pilgrim strategy for America. And I think it's something that fits now very much. It tells us how we might be able to bring this country back to, or not back to what it was, but
A little closer, maybe.
to restore it too.
Yes.
So they had a strategy on.
And we're just going to show you a short clip of it. It's less than 4 minutes,
Okay.
and then we'll talk a little bit about that.
Okay. You ready?
Yes.
All right. Well,
They had a love for God and a love for their families and a love for freedom that brought them to this world. And William Bradford exemplifies that.
I wish they had left us some kind of a training manual, some kind of a secret sauce recipe card that we could pick up and go, all right, here's what it is, here's what we do. What do we do? How do we get back to that?
Now, when the children of Israel going into the Promised Land, they crossed the Jordan River, and God stood it on end, and they walked across. And before the waters stopped parting, God told them to take 12 stones from the bottom of the river and put it up on the top of Mount Gilgal and make a monument, so that when your children ask, what are these stones, you'll be able to tell them, this is where God parted the sea. And that's what the pilgrims left us. They left us a monument that not only gives tribute to what was accomplished here, but it gives us a specific strategy, a breakout of a blueprint of if we would ever forget what made America great, what made us free, we can go back and follow that strategy, and it's right up on a hill a half mile from here.
Right here?
Right here.
This thing is huge.
It's 180 tons of solid granite. It's the largest granite monument in America, and it's hidden on a hilltop overlooking Plymouth in a residential neighborhood.
I've never heard of this.
Hardly anybody in America knows about it, and yet the people of America put this together over a 70-year period, paid for by the Congress, paid for by the state legislature in Massachusetts, as a strategy laid out. We call it the Matrix of Liberty, that was given to us by the forefathers, by the Pilgrims. And those 130 years ago, when they built this, wanted to leave this behind for us, so that if we would ever forget how liberty is built, we would know what to do to regain it.
This is how they did it.
This is how they did it. Now, if somebody else wants to try another way, which is what's happening today in America, we're trying 1,000 ways to turn America around, but this is the way it was done. This is it. The only successful strategy of liberty that has ever been carried out in the history of mankind. Well, let's walk through it. And let's take this strategy apart. What does this mean? What are they trying to tell us here?
So where do you
Well,
start?
her name is Faith. It says so right there. And she is pointing her finger to heaven. Why?
For God is.
Where God is, because her faith is in the God of the Bible, in Jesus Christ. They knew that the only faith that could bring true liberty was a faith in the one true God and his Bible. And you see a Bible there, an open Bible. It's a Geneva Bible. The pages are opened up, which meant that they read it. And as they read it, and as they had faith in God, he gave them wisdom. That's why you see the star on her forehead. She's given wisdom to know how to live in this world. And all of the rest of these statues, each one weighing almost 20 tons, is tied to faith, because without faith, it falls apart. And that's the beginning of it all.
Okay, we are back. So let's dive right into this next part. So that was really interesting. The monument. That's a whole show, right? It's not just.
Yeah, it's a whole show, and if you want to see the whole thing, you can go to YouTube and just put in Kirk Cameron's Monumental.
Kirk Cameron's Monumental.
Right.
And you can watch the whole show. We've all seen it.
The first time I ever saw it, I was shocked. I've lived all over this country and seen a lot of what it has to show us, and I'd never seen that.
I was too. It's amazing. I want to go now.
I do too. I want to go up there to that neighborhood and see that, and which is I mentioned this before in a previous thing. Is like we as a church, as a ministry for years now, actually since the very beginning, for 15 years, we have showed on 4th of July and different times of the year what we would call patriotic items, things that are Christian heritage. We have done a lot of David Barton for 15 years. We've shown, or for many of those years, shown David Barton's Is America a Christian Nation? And it was about source documents. I think he's one of the largest purveyors of source documents in the country. And so it is important for pastors and for churches not to shy away from what they would feel like is political information from the pulpit. It was the Lord's idea to build this country, and it's Christian foundations. And so I haven't shied away from it. We've done life groups on the Patriots Fight. We've been heavily involved in helping people get out and vote their conscience. We've done tried to work hard as a church to introduce that or keep that as part of our ministry, is to be involved in your country, involved in your government, involved. It's we the people anyway. Our country, our form of government is we the people. It's not them and us, it's we. And so our elected officials are us. And that's why it's not a separation between church and state and all those things. And I have never had my boss, King Jesus, ever give me any kind of conviction for sharing political things in the church. And so, pastors, if you're out there, let your congregation know that you are involved in this as well, because there's people in your congregation like Miss Pat and like Lyndon, like myself, who might find a great place to be able to, that's their calling, but your people might not know where their place is. And there is so much information in this area. It takes more than just, a handful of people to cover all of this. And so anyway, I just wanted to plug that, how important that is.
The main point, well, they've brought out several main points from this video, mm-hmm. all of which you wouldn't have seen in this short clip. But it talks about biblical morality. Mm-hmm. Internal character brings about external transformation. And it also talks about law and justice, the principles of God's law written into civil law. And we're going to get into that more. Education. Mm-hmm. Parents training children with biblical principles so that they pass on to future generations.
Parents training children?
Parents training children.
I thought that was the job of the state.
No, not really, especially not the federal.
Mm-hmm. It was never the federals.
No.
Was that one of the 18 enumerated authorities given to the federal government is education?
No.
No. Yeah.
No. And we'll get into that a little bit too. And then there's liberty, the result of obeying the matrix of that liberty. Tyranny is defeated. Mm-hmm. So, the colonies grew over the next 140 years.
It doesn't even seem like it's possible. I mean, when we say that, the colonies were before the country was founded. I mean, before the Declaration in 1776.
Yeah, they were talking about 1620 to 1760.
So people were here building and having, government and spying and selling, and there was a lot going on during those years. Yes,
and they were still under the control of the king. And he's sitting over here across this big, vast ocean. Right. So, and trying to rule over this country. But the interesting part, another interesting part is biblical principles were passed on to succeeding generations through education in home, church, and school. And one of the first textbook was the Bible.
The first textbook in I guess it wasn't the United States yet. the first textbook here in the country was the Bible.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, I believe it was the state of Massachusetts that authorized it.
Authorized, it's like we want that as the textbook.
I was looking for the right word. They paid for the Bibles to get them into families and into the schools. The state did.
The state did. What would, just as a side note, what would be the reason for that?
That was part of their way of educating. That's what this country was built on, God and government.
Mm-hmm.
Why did the Pilgrims come? Go back to the
God and so anyway, so America, it's underpinning. It is a Christian nation. It is.
It is.
mean, you can
It
go the source
definitely is.
documents. I mean, you can't erase the source
Well,
documents.
Let's take it a step further.
Yes.
Have you ever read the Declaration of Independence in its entirety?
Just recently.
Maybe for this
Right.
lesson. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
We kind of drafted Linda.
Thank you, Linda. Good job.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you haven't started reading yet, but good job because it's a big one. So,
Have you?
well, I did, but when we read it before together, I didn't remember reading it. So, I mean,
Okay.
yeah. Anyway,
Okay. So, Linda,
Yes.
I'm going to ask you. Well, first, let me make a comment here.
sure.
In the 1760s, the colonists were getting really upset with England's tyrannical rule. There was a lot of things that the king was doing.
Mhm.
One of the grievances they had was taxation without representation.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the main one. The main one was no king but King Jesus. They were wanting God in the government. They were wanting the king out, and they wanted freedom.
I thought our democracy was all about economics, taxation and money and things like that. Isn't that what our democracy is about?
I'm going to jump the gun a little bit on you and get ahead here.
And,
What kind of government do we have?
a democracy.
Don't think so.
You don't think so?
No. Maybe a republic.
That's what our elected officials keep telling us, that we're a democracy.
Have they read the Constitution?
Probably not. I mean, and they've sworn to it, and I think God kind of holds that. Swearing is pretty high regards. That's kind of like a vow, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
What is our country? What is our
Linda
government?
Linda was right.
What is it?
A republic.
A constitutional republic.
A constitutional republic. Well, why do these people keep saying democracy?
Well, that's what they're trying to make it. Or there's several things they're trying to make it. We'll get more into that in a little bit. But basically, we the people elect representatives
Mm-hmm.
who represent us in what is now Washington, D.C. And they're supposed to be making law and that sort of thing with regard to the Constitution and with regard to what their constituents want. It doesn't always work that way.
No, it doesn't. And that's part of the 12-week class that just
Yes.
amazed me when I went through that.
So it's not okay. So the taxation without representation, which has been pushed a lot as the number one reason why this country was founded, but that's not it at all. According again to the source documents, these people that wanted this country, their slogan was "No king but King Jesus."
Right.
That was more of what more of the topper issues.
And
Can you say topper issues? Yeah.
I don't think so.
And as Linda reads this, she's going to read all 27 grievances along with it.
Wow. Good job, Miss Linda.
But pay attention to the fact that God is mentioned right in the Declaration of Independence.
Oh, yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
Not once, but several times.
Right.
I look forward to hearing this.
Okay,
Go for it,
here
Linda.
we go. The Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We all know this next part.
Mm-hmm.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under the I lost my place.
Absolutely.
Evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, and it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of all these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of present King of Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object establishment of absolute tyranny over these states. Now, to prove this, let's face the facts. Let facts be submitted to a candid world. Now, these are the 27 grievances.
So, way back at the very beginning, for those who have maybe never read this and never known this, about the way our country's government was looked at. You know, we think of government, it's like who's in charge, you know, basically who are we putting in charge, who is going to make decisions on our behalf, because we can't all stand there and make decisions about everything that we need in our country. So we elect people in our constitutional republic to represent us based on the Constitution, to go to make decisions on our behalf, because it can't get all, 380 million of us, unless we're doing, something's on the ballot, whatnot. They go and make a decision for us. But in order to this government to even be formed, this government, which is what I want to get to, this government was formed to secure our rights. So I'm sorry I said all that, but if they've never read this, right here at the very second paragraph of this, what our rights are from God, it's self-evident. So when people have ever read this, like, we don't need to prove this. It's self-evident. It's logical to any person that these rights come from God. Okay, right? So it's self-evident. It's one of those, like, we don't have to sit there and explain to you that you've got rights from your Creator. It's like a duh thing. So they didn't spend a lot of time trying to hassle that, go over that. It's like we hold these true self-evidence that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And so that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what these inalienable rights, these God-given rights. To secure these rights, governments are instituted. Our government was instituted by the people to secure our rights to life, liberty, and freedom, not all this other nonsense, this big bloated thing that become of our government. Is that right?
That's right.
Is that what I'm hearing?
That's right. And then, so when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, then they have all these grievances that they want to tell them. And
They're telling this to King George.
yes,
This is a letter sent to King George. Listen, we're not putting up with your mess anymore. That's taken us this long. We put up with it for this amount of time. Here's 27 reasons why. Not one, not two, not just transient kind of causes, but these are big things and we've suffered long enough. We're done with you. Here they are.
Yes.
And that's what you're going to do.
Yes. Okay. So to start off with, it says he has refused his assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those people would relinquish the rights of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing, with manly firmness, his invasions on the rights of people. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of the new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount in payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation.
Pretended legislation.
Yes. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent.
That's number 17. That's the one, the taxation without representation. There's an awful lot of other things that they thought were more important. Would you think that these were kind of put in kind of an order based on importance?
Possibly. Yeah. 18 is for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government. For suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for all of us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicted government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coast, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun with the circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy of the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by a repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Wow.
That's a lot of reading, and that's a big mouthful, and there's so much going on right there. If somebody has never actually read that, they need to get a copy of that.
56 men representing the 13 colonies signed that.
Yes.
I don't know how long it took them to write that, but there was a lot of thought went into it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's...
they didn't just see one guy sit down and say, hey, here it is. They probably really worked on the reasons why. And they had 140 years worth of reasons why.
Yeah, it'd been going on forever. And of course, it ended up in the Revolutionary War. which to me wasn't really a revolution. It was a battle for freedom.
Right.
As opposed to being a revolution. Well, I guess it was to the king.
Yeah.
But it was, there was a lot of things in the Declaration of Independence. On July the 4th, 1776, the Continental Congress wrote the Declaration of Independence. John Quincy Adams would later state, "The highest glory of the American Revolution was this: it connected in one indissoluble bond the principles of civil government with the principles of Christianity."
Yes.
Civil government with the
Prince. Yeah.
with the principles. There's a bond. What's that word? Indissoluble.
Yes,
That has a root in not being able to dissolve
you
it.
can't get rid of it.
Right.
So no matter what, well, can we say enemies? It's right there in the Declaration. It says enemies and war and peace and friends and peace.
You know, they came to this country for freedom of religion, and instead of having one national church, they immigrated to this country so that they could worship in the way that they saw best.
Yes.
And today, that's still the idea of this country: freedom of speech, freedom of worship.
Right.
And some people have lost sight of that. I mean,
A lot of people have lost sight of that.
Is it probably, other than Jesus himself as ruler of the earth, is it ever a good idea to vest all power, like the governmental powers, into one church kind of thing? Has it ever been probably a good idea, other than Jesus when he's ruling and reigning here? He's the only one that I know of that is able to handle being completely and totally in charge with all power invested in him.
Yes.
Because the Bible says all power of rule in heaven and on earth have been given to me. He's the only one that because he's God, can do it. Other than that, one person shouldn't, a total, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
yes.
So they did not want a national church like it was over in English, because that's just a breeding, can I say that, breeding ground for corruption.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. But
That's true.
Because it was like, well, thus saith the, that's what kind of was going on, like in some of the other religions. You get one person who becomes God, basically, and that's the only person who can speak to God for the rest of the denomination.
Well, the King of England
Was supposedly and unsupposedly divinely appointed by God, right, to speak for the people, or what were you going to say?
Now, the King of England obviously fancied himself in God's position.
Exactly.
I like the way you said that.
Yeah.
Fancied himself as the Lord. Right?
Right.
Yeah, and sometimes I say strange things. But
Well, I like the way that came out. So, anyway, this back to this whole thing is connected in one indissoluble
yeah, you got it.
bond, the principle of civil government and the principle of Christianity.
Okay, to take it further, back to the Declaration of Independence, God is mentioned, 4 times, including the phrase, the laws of nature and nature's God, as the standard which American law is based.
Yes.
Now, do you know what those mean? The laws of nature and nature's God, because we're going to hear that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to hear it even more when we go into the 12-week course.
Mm-hmm.
It's in just about every lesson on that one.
The laws of... Oh, go ahead.
That's right. I was just going to say, can you explain in your words what each of those mean?
Let's refer to Webster's 1828 dictionary.
Okay.
Then we'll talk about my words.
Okay.
And it's good to get a Webster's 1828 dictionary, because why?
We use the 1828 dictionary because it's not something that changes. Words, the meaning of words don't change unless you're on Google or something. Can I say that?
Yes, you can say that.
I mean, whoever decides to write a definition of a word, they write it to suit their own needs at that particular moment.
True.
It may change tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But the Webster's 1828 dictionary, yes, it goes back to 1828, but words still don't change.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we use in this training.
And this is what the definitions in that dictionary were the words and the definition and the meaning that were used and commonly understood at the time this was all written, not some crazy out there that's tweaked the definitions nowadays to some of these things. Is that, and they can get the app. I got the app on my iPad. I think it costs just a couple of dollars to get that. And so if I look up a word, I'll go look it up in that Webster's app to see what it actually
refer to that as opposed to
the common ones.
Yeah, I know Google is easy to get to, but it's not always
Right.
a valid definition as far as.
But everything on the internet's true, especially Wikipedia.
Oh, yeah.
I'm kidding. Yes. I'm sorry. I keep interrupting, and I know we want to get done with this soon. So I was just, when I hear something, I think it's a useful item. I share it. So
that's good.
Go.
So, all right, let's define the laws of nature. According to Webster's, the laws of nature are our God-given constitution. Now, before we go into that, the laws of nature's God, the moral law, is contained in the Ten Commandments, written by the finger of God. To add to that, Sir William Blackstone also included revealed law, all revealed law, which is the divine laws found in the Bible.
Divine laws.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, the laws of nature and nature's God, you have a conscience.
Mm-hmm.
Even little kids are born with a conscience.
Yes.
I had a 1-year-old in my house yesterday, and she knew what she was supposed to do and what she was not supposed to do.
She looked back when she was going to do something she wasn't supposed to do.
So that internal conscience of knowing right from wrong, the one that God wrote in our heart, that's the laws of nature.
That's the laws of nature.
And then the nature's God is
the Ten Commandments
revealed.
And Sir William Blackstone also said all revealed laws, which is the Bible.
Right.
The divine word in the Bible.
So if we, so the laws of nature, the conscience, and the nature's God, did I get that right?
Mm-hmm.
Are things that God revealed, like, the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai. He revealed his law to the people. Yes.
Let's see.
In case anybody, because when we first started this, I wasn't sure what that meant.
No. When I first got into this, started doing this, I thought, okay.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? I found out very quickly because it's talked about a lot. As a matter of fact, Romans 2:14 and 15 says, indeed, when Gentiles who do not have the law do by nature things required by the law, they are a law for themselves, even though they do not have the law. They show that the requirements of the law are written on their hearts, their consciences also bearing witness, and their thoughts sometimes accusing them, and at other times even defending them.
Can't get any more clear than that. That's that conscience.
It's that conscience. That's your conscience. Everybody has one. Some of them don't listen. I'm sure all of it, but all three of us have not listened to our conscience at some point in time.
Yes.
What are you saying?
Can I say that to a pastor?
Probably. Yeah.
I just did it.
I have to repent quite a bit, so.
Okay. Well, the founders knew that the King of England was making laws. They called that pretended legislation. In other words, it wasn't valid. That was grievance number 13 and number 19 that they talked about that. The same principle is true today. Any law, executive order, or court opinion that does not comply with the laws of nature or nature's God is illegitimate.
Uh-huh.
So something like, we're going to go there just real quick because I know we're running out of time again, that, well, the Supreme Court ruled that abortion is the law of the land in 1960, whatever. And I know they overturned that last year or a year before that. Was that law?
No.
That's pretended.
Well, that's pretended law, but what it amounts to, the Supreme Court does not make law. It makes decisions directed at the people involved with the case they're dealing with.
Not just a blanket statement over the entire country and bound the whole country.
Roe versus Wade is a beautiful example. It only involved Roe versus Wade. Those two. It didn't involve
everybody else for 40 years.
Yeah.
So, but it also had to do with actual murder, babies. Would that be pretended legislation? What if the actual legislator tried to legalize that? Would that be also pretended legislation? Because it's not correct.
And we're going to cover this in the second lesson, but
okay.
No, well, I'll answer your question though. But the whole thing is based on the simple fact that the legislature is the only part of the government that makes law.
In our country.
In our country. The Supreme Court does not, the President does not, and on top of that, they are limited on the laws that they make.
Right.
It really was only supposed to be defined by the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and all that, what they're supposed to be
the
even
laws
working
of nature
on.
And nature's God.
And so any of this other nonsense and all these other agencies and stuff like that really weren't even part of the
healthcare, environmental protection agencies, and all that stuff. That is not a part of the government. The states, wherever the federal government is limited, the states.
Each individual can pick up that item.
Right.
And whatever's, and if a state doesn't do it, it's the people.
Right. And it goes back to us, the people. We're the ones who put them in office anyway. Right.
So if a state didn't want to, federal government has the 18 enumerated powers. And if it doesn't fall into that thing, then it's given to the states. And if you don't like the state's decisions, you can move to another state that doesn't like that. But the federal government doesn't just say, everybody's going to do this. We don't even have the power to. They didn't even have the power to do that. Like the whole education system was never the federal jurisdiction.
The healthcare system, Social Security. But I'll take some jobs.
I know this is probably lesson 2, so I know. Well, but anyway, it's interesting this whole thing. But
we have our fundamental rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And the the Declaration of Independence points out that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
So we're given permission to the federal government to make decisions based on us, not to rule over us like a bunch of tyrants.
Right.
Which is why we declared declaration in the first place, because of this tyranny and stuff like that. So we're given consent to be governed. Right. It's like I'm giving you permission to make decisions on my behalf.
You go to the polls and you vote. Hopefully you're voting for the person and the platform they're on, and not for a party.
True.
This isn't about Republicans or Democrats. It's not about denominations or non-denominations. It's about God and government.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, the words of the first 2 paragraphs of the Declaration of Independence: there is a God, the God of the Bible. Our rights come from Him, And the purpose of the government is to protect these God-given rights.
Right.
That's what the government's supposed to be doing.
And that's pretty well it.
That's pretty well it.
Leave us, you shouldn't be involved in all these other, just this gigantic monstrosity that it's become.
Yeah, the government budget is ridiculous. And we'll get into ways to help people make determinations on who to vote for, how to find out information. You can even go online and look at their voting records and that sort of thing.
True.
So the end of this class is really to help people take action steps where they've got the ammunition. This is not our opinion. This is what the founding represented. This is what the founding fathers said. This is what everybody signed on the dotted line. This is the way we're going to play the game. And if you don't want to play the game like that, then you shouldn't be in office, or you shouldn't be in charge of any of this stuff, right? If you're not going to go based on, it is what this class is about, to help the citizen understand that there's a whole lot of stuff that's going on that's not correct, and there's no authority, really, God-given authority anyway, to even be doing those. So it's time to vote for people that are going to
restore that.
Restore the God-given rights.
Put God back in our government, put him back in our schools.
Mm-hmm.
It's a simple case of we the people standing up and saying, okay.
So there's
We're done.
action points. So as we go through this information, the ending of this is these are some actionable steps.
Yes.
Here's the information over the next couple of weeks in bite-sized chunks. Here's what you can do at the very end.
And this just opens this class just opens your eyes to what you can do and makes you aware of, wow, I didn't realize that.
Excuse me, I've had people comment to me, well, I pray.
And that's good.
That's wonderful. Keep on. Prayer does a lot. I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And I pray. We all three pray. But sometimes God wants you to take action too.
What's the faith and works? You show me your faith, I'll show you my works. My works proves my faith. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We don't lean on our works to get to go to heaven, but we believe what God says.
But, sometimes he wants us to take action.
Yeah.
We're doing this class because I was told to take action.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm not sure I'm doing it right, but I'm putting the information out there, and we all have choices.
You've really opened my eyes on a lot of things. So it's a really good class to take.
And this is just other than the introduction, this is just the first lesson. We've got 4 other lessons.
Right. Yeah, as a matter of fact, let's check out and see what we're going to do next time.
Okay. And that's great because we're over a little over an hour.
Okay. Next week or next time we're going to talk about Articles of the Constitution 1 and 2.
Articles 1 and 2, Constitution. Mm-hmm. Got it.
And just a quote from James Madison. Every word of the Constitution decides a question between power and liberty.
Okay.
I like it.
Yep.
So these are supposed to be on Tuesdays about 8 o'clock Central Time. This is when they go streaming. If they miss the stream on Tuesdays at 8 o'clock, they can go to the Alive Media Network mainly, and then it'll be across the other, it'll be across the Alive Media Network and all of its platforms, but mainly on Roku is where the main channel is. If they miss it, they can go to the VOD, which is the video on demand, and pick up the videos then and share them. And of course, it'd be very helpful if they would. It's a little thing on the people's part, but a big thing on our part to be able to share this out. Do the whole thing. Everybody. We all know the algorithms on all these channels require likes, subscriptions, all this. I would say, even if you're never going to listen to this again, subscribe. It'll maybe help it to get to somebody else out, really. And so that'll Tuesdays mainly at 8 o'clock throughout. Okay. And so, we're going to leave some contact information at the bottom of the screen or somewhere on the screen so you can reach out and contact. We'll make sure that if you have questions or comments or things you want to share, you can put those across the platforms. But if you want to send one directly, Miss Pat will make sure Miss Pat gets those. And if they would like to have some questions answered, maybe they can send them and maybe be able to try to address those if we get some of those in. So I think that'll be all at the bottom of the screen. And then I do want to pray when we get done. And so
Yeah, I think we pretty much covered everything, well, as much as we can in our time limitations.
Sure.
But like I said, next week is Articles 1 and 2, and we're also going to talk a little bit about the preamble of the Constitution and who makes laws and all that sort of thing.
That's awesome.
Sounds good.
You did a good job. Didn't Linda do a good job with reading
Yes.
that? It was.
Yes.
I did not want to read. That thing was like this long. I mean, I looked at it. It was like tiny, tiny little print on my side. It was like on and on and on. But it's fantastic. We needed it, and so she did a great job with that. And of course, Miss Pat does a great job with this.
We're not going to make her read the Constitution.
Oh,
good.
no!
Maybe the preamble, but nothing else.
We'll bring Miss Linda back for that. So, well, on. Like to pray on behalf of the Torch crew and stuff? May I? Okay.
Yes.
Well, Father, thank you for allowing us to be able to do this class, these lessons. Lord, doing our part, like Miss Pat said, it's like taking some action. We do pray, and we do seek your counsel, and we do seek your face. And God, you're the one that came. It was your idea to send those people and put those people, you burden like Christopher Columbus, it's like the Holy Spirit put it on his heart to go, and he prayed, but he put action to it, and he went, and look what all transpired since then. And so each one of us can just do our part, and if each one of us just does our part, dear God, pardon me, it can do a lot. And Lord, what you're doing, I feel like across the land, not only in the Torch, through the Alive Media Network, through Church Alive, and through many other ministries, there's a reawakening to this beautiful, limitless, so precious and extraordinary country that you've given us, and its form of representative government, dear God, could only be put together by you. So Lord, help us to do our part. Please forgive us. Please forgive our government. Please forgive the people of this land for their lack of involvement in a lot of ways, or being too, overstepping bounds. Forgive us for the mistakes that have been made. Lord, help us to get back going forward as a free people. We love you. We thank you. We acknowledge Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. All right.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.